Hi, my name is Mark Mattson, and I'm a lecturer of civil engineering technology at SUNY Polytechnic Institute. And I'm excited today to talk to you about how we can enhance engineering education with HyFlex. Now, engineering in its nature is an industry that's driven by efficiency. I've been an engineer for 20 plus years, and in that time, we're always looking to take something and make it better. So at one point in our lives, we had to figure out how to get from point A to point B. Now, back in the day, there was walking, there was horses, but eventually, guess what? We made some things called the horseless carriage, right? Like this Ford Model T. And through technological advancements, we moved on and we didn't stay there. We drove ourselves literally to the point where we could make some of these advancements, right? And we got to a Ford Mustang where now we can go 0 to 60 in a matter of, seconds, right? And what happens with engineering is we take an idea and we advance it to make it better, to make it more efficient. Now, I believe that process of engineering is something that we can apply to education as well, right? Because what do? We first start with some sort of a purpose. What's the purpose? Well, in the point of the vehicle, it's to get from point A to point B. But in education, right, we're trying to convey some knowledge to other people, to students, so that they can go and perform similar designs, right? So those designs are what the engineers put together. Ultimately, right, that's like the design for how to build the car, right? But ultimately, we have to evaluate it and say, is this working? Is it doing its intended function or purpose? Now, as technology develops, right, 1920s technologies versus 2020s technologies are very different, right? In comes the technological advancements. And this is where I think HyFlex really fits in terms of education, because, at one point we were using chalk on a chalkboard and that was the primary mode of instruction, right? But now we have some of these technological advancements that come through HyFlex, like that come through some of these video means, that come through some of the online learning, that come through some of the interactive engagement strategies that we can apply both for in-person, online, whether it's synchronous or synchronous students, right? So that's pretty exciting because engineering education, again, can be approached with the same process. So what's the purpose? What's the purpose of engineering education? Well, I believe it's the idea that we're trying to convey technical information, right? How to design a component, how to design a beam so that it doesn't kill somebody, right? But also so that it's not so overly, redundant and overly inefficient that it just costs an excess amount of money, right? But ultimately, I'm not just trying to convey information. I want students to be able to apply that information back and to be able to apply those same principles so they can work forward in their careers to do that type of engineering, right? So HyFlex, I believe, provides an efficient modality to enhance engineering education. And you might be thinking, well, why specifically for this? And I'll give the standard definition here of HyFlex, but HyFlex does allow students to self-select their modality, right? Their course learning modality. It gives the students that ability to self-identify, hey, how am I going to learn best? What are my constraints and restrictions here? How can I apply and how can I engage with the teaching material in the best way that works for me? Maybe this class or this week or this whole semester, right? It gives students the ability to choose in person, online, synchronous or asynchronous, and sometimes multiple modalities at the same time. So one of the questions that I had when I first started teaching HyFlex was, well, why do students choose a particular modality? What's the purpose behind it? Like, why? Like, right? So I took my courses for the past 2 semesters. For the past 2 semesters, I've taught 5 different classes that were in HyFlex. I had 1,800 responses to a form that I put out there with my students that said, essentially it was just a sample, attendance kind of form, but each class they had to fill this out, tell me the date of the lecture, and tell me which class modality they chose for lectures, just to get some tracking data. Hey, how are you engaging with this material? So not crazy responses here, but most of them, about half of them or a little bit more than half participated locally in person. A lot of the students that I work with like that face-to-face interaction. They come. I had some students during COVID that just said, I'm done with online. I don't like it. I can't sit there and actually watch something and stay engaged in it. So I'm going to come in person. And they did that. I had another, about 40% here that chose to engage in an online modality, and that was split pretty evenly between sync and async across my courses. Now, some of those had to do with commuting or other things. And that was my next question. I said, well, why did you choose this modality, right? So of the people that responded, what I had was, there's this top area of unforeseen circumstances, schedule constraints, commuting, weather, or health concerns, right? But far and above all the others was, I think I learn the best this way. Now, I believe that HyFlex promotes engagement by allowing students to select what works best for them, right? If you have some ability to self-select and say, hey, I think I'm going to learn the best this way, either today or tomorrow. I need that face-to-face interaction, or maybe I want to avoid a 2-hour commute, right? I mean, you can choose what's going to work best for you as a student. And not only this, it's not only the self-selection, but I think also one thing that goes kind of as a second thought with HyFlex is the idea that it doesn't end with the first interaction, because HyFlex also provides continued access to the material, right? So maybe somebody shows up either online, synchronously or in person, but it doesn't end there, because they can go back to that material. I once had a student, and I asked that student, hey, how often do you go back and watch the recordings? This was a student that would show up in person every class. And that student responded, every homework assignment. And all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, that makes so much sense, because you and I, maybe we have the same way of learning something, but whether it's a recipe for something that we're cooking, or we're trying to fix something on the car, right? One of the things that we'll do is we'll go to YouTube and we'll look up a video and we'll say, okay, yeah, I can do that. Inevitably, what happens for me is I get out to the garage and I'm starting to work on my car and something doesn't go quite right. And I think, oh no. But what I love about that is I can go back to YouTube, I can re-watch that portion of the video where I got lost, and I can keep moving forward. Now, HyFlex provides that ability for further engagement with the material. It doesn't just end, and if you miss the lecture, you're done. No, it gives students the opportunity to keep pushing on and keep pressing in to the material. Now, as Linville and Wallen wrote in their effectiveness of a HyFlex teaching pedagogy and environmental engineering education, they wrote a paper, and they said one of their conclusions they came up with was, as long as there's a plan for student engagement, performance will not suffer. So that kind of transitions us here to ask the next big question, and the next big question is, how do we engage students in HyFlex courses? You might be thinking, like, this is sort of an oxymoron. We got people that can do whatever they want, and yet we still need to engage them. And that's the goal as the educator. Again, we're not just trying to convey information. We want the students to be able to apply that information themselves. Now, Marshall and Marshall, back in 2005, put together a paper for ASE that said that identified crucial teaching strategies for engineering educators. And these are some of the various strategies they came up with, right? And I'm not going to go through each of them here, but focusing on learning, problem-based learning, facilitating and group learning, learning behavior outside the classroom, preparing to teach, those types of things are you can dive into the paper for those. But the one that I really want to focus on as we look at engagement here is problem-based learning. As engineers, right, we're always solving problems, right? I mean, it was that problem of how to get from point A to point B, right? And we wanted something more efficient than a horse, right? In whether it's structural engineering or some other method of engineering, we're trying to figure out problems. So this isn't really revolutionary here, but guess what? Problem-based learning requires practice problems, right? And this is just something that students need to be able to figure out. We can't just tell students information. They have to figure out how to do them themselves. So one of the things that I've done in a lot of my classes, both, and I think this helps both in-person and online students, is I've come up with some worksheets. The in-person students, I can give them a handout. The online students, they can either use a tablet or a stylus on a computer, or they can print these out as well. But these are just handouts that give specific practice problems here. So here's a simple problem where we have to do some force balance, right? We have all this force coming down and we have some forces going up, and we have to be able to balance that to make sure that the thing doesn't go into outer space or doesn't sink into the ground. And this is one of those problems. But then I'll give this problem, we'll go over some concepts in class, and I'll say, how much time do you think you need to solve it? And that is one of the best questions I think I can ask, because it gives the students a little bit of, it's not a very high stakes question. There's no really wrong answer, right? But what I do next is I think where engagement really takes place. And this is where I give them a timer. Right, and I'll have 2 or 3 minutes of dead time in class so that the students can actually engage with it and try to work through the problems themselves. And you might be thinking, well, how does that work in the context of HyFlex? Well, in HyFlex, we have the sync async options, we have the in-person or online options. And for sync, I can just have them work on the problems and then talk to their peers, like turn next to you. Okay, what do you think? How'd you get that answer? Why is my answer different than yours? We can go through that process. If they're synchronous, we can do the same thing with live chat, or we can do even discussion verbally through microphones, right? So the sync portion is the easier part. In terms of async, in person, I haven't figured that one out yet. If you do, let me know. But the async online portion, we can do discussion boards, right, where people post their solutions and how'd you get this or how'd you get that. They can post questions. They can just email. We could also do the things with embedded questions right in the video so that they give some get some feedback initially, right? So this is just, it's crucial to find out ways to engage the students in all those modalities. And for problem solving, these are some ways you can do it. So it's just, taking the timer to let the students do it, pausing the video for students that maybe are async, right? And honestly, this is one of those things where I had a student at one point, he had failed the course previously, and he came back and he didn't show up in person anymore. He just did completely async online. And I saw him later in the hallway. I said, hey, why'd you choose that? Just curious, no worries. You're doing well in the course this semester. He said, well, honestly, it helps me to be able to pause the video, write down notes, and keep going, right? That pausing the video for him was crucial because as he put it, he's like, sometimes I have a hard time listening and writing and processing it all at once. So HyFlex gave him an additional modality, an additional option, an opportunity to engage with and learn the material. So after lecture, don't worry, I still give the students problems. But one of the things to help them engage with it that I do is I use Lumino HM in some of my classes, where I really like this system because it gives them unique numbers, right? With instant feedback. They can tell if they got it right or wrong. And guess what? If they get it wrong 2 times, they can get the answer. But then there's multiple versions so they can keep practicing it to get the right answer. And essentially, they have unlimited opportunity to get full credit. This helps the unique numbers, the instant feedback, and the multiple versions help because the unique numbers cuts down on just straight out cheating, right? I mean, it's not like you can just copy your neighbors. You have to at least plug in your own numbers. The instant feedback helps them. It helps to build confidence. It's not just, well, I'm going to do this and whatever I get, I get. No, it can reinforce that confidence level when you realize, hey, I got it wrong, or, oh, wait, I didn't get it right, and I need to reach out to the instructor. I need to reach out to a tutor. I need to reach out to someone else that can help, right? And that's what I tell my students to do. Hey, if you get it wrong once, try it again. If you get it wrong a second time, reach out and get help. And one of the things that I tell my students all the time is, first day of class, it doesn't matter how you participate in HyFlex. You just have to participate. You have to engage, because engagement is what drives your learning, right? So you might be thinking, like, that's great, but can't students fall off the wagon? Sure, they can. They can stop attending altogether, and HyFlex doesn't negate that possibility. That can happen in person or with HyFlex, but it is a struggle that we have to figure out how to work with students. But one of the things that I love is, hey, if they fall behind a class or 2 because they were sick, there's a way to make it up. Now, going forward, I'm excited for future technological improvements that might drive further change and drive further success with HyFlex. And with more engaging strategies, we'll hopefully see more success for students. So what do some of those look like? Admittedly, I haven't used a ton of these yet. They're kind of at the cutting edge, but H5P has some HTML5 really neat options for interactive web page for students. These can tie right into Brightspace. So definitely some really, really cool options there. Also, I'm excited to kind of see where AI goes. Hey, can you help me with my homework? I'm hoping AI turns more into a tutor, like we might see it like Khan Academy, where they're going to help you walk through the process and maybe figure out what you did wrong or what you need to do to figure it, and not just give you an answer, right? But help you walk through that learning process. So I'm excited for what the future has to hold. I'm excited for the technological improvements that HyFlex hold right now that help us to engage our students, right? They can choose what they want. They can engage with the material how they want. Now, what I'm going to say here is I think engineering education is enhanced by providing multiple modalities, right? This is HyFlex. This allows students to maybe attend in person or online synchronously, but also, in the future, it requires engagement, right? Engineering education is enhanced when engagement is required, right? And also, if you can give that immediate feedback, it helps to address the competency and build confidence in students. And lastly, I think the future access is key, because the next time you go back to watch that YouTube video of something you were trying to figure out, just remember the future access, or the online access, the continued access, is key to help continue to learn. So those are my thoughts on why I believe HyFlex is an awesome option to enhance engineering education. I hope this helps somebody out there, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.